Dave is just running a bit behind. He'll be joining us shortly. And Manchester United fans that want to leave, expecting to see Louis Saha, now's a good time to, if you're not interested in a discussion on the future of sports media. I'm joined by Ian and by George. I'm going to start with Ian because, like myself, Ian's background is in print journalism and newspaper journalism, which is very much in decline. I think you'd probably be slightly more negative about the future of print than I would. But you're with The Guardian, you're head of sport for the Guardian Group. Can you give us a bit of insight into your strategy for sports media at the moment, for sports journalism?
I think we've seen a decade of kind of extraordinary structural change, not just in sports journalism, but journalism as a whole. And if I could cast my mind back to what my job entailed when I started at The Guardian, where your entire working day built towards one evening print deadline, where you have one publishing point of the day, and compare that to the way we work now, where we're publishing from hubs in London, New York, Sydney, pretty much 24/7, and to an audience that looks nothing like The Guardian's audience when I started out. We're now the third biggest English language newspaper online in the world, and our readers are as likely to be in Bangalore as they are in Burnley. So that has completely changed a lot of the kind of structural nature of the way we do journalism and how we write and who we write it for. And in terms of our strategy for that going forward, it's also we're lucky in terms of being a predominantly UK-based paper, in that we have on our doorstep the Premier League, which is the kind of the epitome of a global sports product. We're lucky in that the sports that have traditionally kind of been a mainstay of West European audiences, rugby, cricket in the UK, motor racing, boxing, also have very, very significant global followings.
Yeah, well,
so the
UK
sports that were our core strengths.
The UK and Ireland are huge consumers of information around sport and commentary around sport, and that's probably something that you've been able to tap into.
Yes, it has, but it also gave us a very, very healthy basis for taking our product, as it were, to a much, much wider global audience, particularly around football. Even with things you can be a little bit skeptical about. I mean, say if you take the competitiveness of an average Formula One season, you forget just how wide an audience there is out there for Formula One. Even when it doesn't seem to be making up too much impact on your domestic radar, there are just millions and millions of people around the world obsessed with it. And that is your potential audience now. They are the people you've got to go and chase. And it's not all about reach either. In that reach is important. We grow our reach year on year by double-digit percentages. But really, I think the kind of what will be the obsession for digital sports media in the next few years is loyalty. We get a hell of a lot of traffic through search, but a lot of it can be a little bit ephemeral, one-time hits. I think what we think most about at the moment is how to convert those kind of occasional fly-by-night users into more loyal consumers from once a week to 7 days a week.
I'll come to you in a sec, George. And just to finish this point, journalism is still at the core of what The Guardian does. The same as my own paper, The Sunday Independent. It is still very much about journalism at its core. So how do you manage those two? How do you work that relationship between this digital evolution of what you're producing and keeping that journalism that's at the core of what you do?
I think the thing that has changed least in the last decade has been the core values of the journalism. And you can't, I think it would be suicidal for a brand like The Guardian, which builds so much of its kind of its loyalty and its trust of its users around the quality of its journalism, to kind of in any way dilute or downgrade the essential principles of what you do journalistically. The platforms change, the formats change, the kind of content devices change, but I don't think the principles of the journalism do. I never should.
There are different types of how sport is presented. I mean, it was traditionally always the three things: newspaper, radio, TV, and you had the sports and you had the journalists and you had the audience. That line is continuously fudging, and it's a good example is what you're doing with boxing, where
Yeah.
on one hand you own the rights, you have the stable of boxers, you're putting on the fights with one arm of your business, and then with the other arm of the business, Box Nation, you're actually broadcasting that. Can you tell us a bit about that? You were just saying backstage that it kind of grew a bit out of necessity because of the mainstream media doesn't always engage with boxing the way perhaps boxing feels that it should.
Absolutely. The birth of Box Nation back in September 2011 came about from the concept that as what you'd probably call a second-tier sport in the UK, not wanting to be reliant on the judgment of whoever the head of sport is as certain broadcasters. Traditionally, as we all know, the Premier League is what dominates both your landscape and what you report on, but obviously also what subscription sports channels are going to go on. And we've seen recently, Sky and BT Sport both heavily invest again in Premier League football. Now that will have a trickle-down effect on other sports, and in particular boxing. It was a vision that we saw back in 2011, something that we didn't want to get involved with, and felt we could go out and prove that actually there is a market for boxing, not just in the UK and Ireland, but around the world. And so far, it's been very successful.
Yeah, can you just fill us in from that, launch point in September 2011 to now, nearly just over 4 years later, your evolution? At what point are you at now in your journey?
Well, we launched, as I said, in September 2011. We launched free-to-air for the first 3 months to build exposure of the channel and the fighters that we're involved with. We've got a promotional stable of approximately 50 boxers involved, various levels from world champions all the way down to British champions. We encrypted on both the Sky and Virgin platform first in December of that year, and we've slowly grown that to enable us to reach as many people and as many customers as possible. TalkTalk was a later acquisition for us. We're in advanced talks at the moment with BT TV, and for me the most exciting part of our business, and something that we're seeing the most rapid growth in subscription rates and customer retention for, is our digital platform. So it's another way of being able to access customers that don't want to subscribe to a traditional TV broadcaster, and in particular moving forward, when we move out of the UK arm of our business and focus a little bit more on a global platform, it gives us the ability to monetize and take advantage of huge populations where traditional TV is just not an option for these people.
Okay, I think we're going to be joined in a moment now by David Katz, who's the former head of Yahoo Sports and the founder and CEO of the Post Game. So while he's joining us, if we just take the next step, something like Mayweather and Pacquiao, €25 on Sky. What's your view on that? Is that a sustainable model for boxing, or would you like to see it? I think you bid for that fight, did you? So you are interested in.
We did, yes. Yeah. We've shown.
Would you have charged 25 quid? Do you think?
I think we'd have had to charge 100 quid. Listen, Mayweather-Pacquiao, in my belief, for us, it came probably a year too early. I honestly believe that if it was happening in 2016, we'd have had a very, very good chance of securing the rights for that, not just in the UK, but in many territories around the world. And one of the reasons I believe that is because we're forward-thinking in this sport that we're involved in, like no one else is, in a similar model to how the WWE network is transforming how they can reach customers around the world. That's something that we look at and we think is very achievable within boxing. The numbers that Mayweather-Pacquiao did were phenomenal. It's reported 500 million people watched it. There's figures between $400 and $600 million worth of revenue that it created. But there's only so many territories that they could actually take advantage of pay-per-view or subscription activity. Places such as India, China, various countries, there are huge populations, but not that ability to take payment processing for live sport haven't been utilised. Now that's something we want to do, and when we feel that we'll be able to do that, that's when we can start testing prices. I mean, my personal belief is and what I would like to do with Box Nation is get to a position where we're offering a global fight that's talked about as much as that event was, but offering it for $1, but getting 1 billion people to pay for it.
How achievable is that, do you think?
it's as achievable as maybe crazy as it sounds. I always go on, if you ask anyone some of their top 3, 5 maybe iconic sporting moments that they can ever remember, there's usually 2 or 3 boxing events in there. And boxing has that ability on the night to just completely engage audiences.
When you have 2 fighters that capture the imagination,
absolutely.
The sky's the limit.
For us, what we're seeing as well, I mean, as you mentioned, we're a promotional company as well, and the traditional promoter, what you will do is you'll try and maintain and keep your champion boxers undefeated and protected to protect your rights deal. We can't focus like that anymore. We have to make sure that we're delivering for our live customers and for us customers that are buying the TV channel. And the only way you can do that is making engaging, exciting fights and forgetting about records.
David, we'll bring you in at this stage. Thanks for joining us.
I liked the dramatic opening, so sorry for the late entrance. I was in the speaker room.
We've been talking about traditional media, and in a way, that's something that you're involved with. You've taken traditional media and put it into a digital context. Can you talk about, the idea behind what you tried to do with the post-game?
Absolutely. So I used to run Yahoo Sports, and the goal back when we were building Yahoo Sports was really to build a better newspaper, candidly, and no offense to the newspapers represented, but the idea was it's a place to get the scores, the stats, the information, maybe you play a little fantasy, but yet a one-stop shop for all the sports information that you'd want, core to the game. What I felt was missing going back many, many years ago was no one had really reinvented the concept of a sports magazine for this digital audience. And using the U.S. version of that, it was Sports Illustrated. They had the greatest writing staff in the United States in sports writing, and they kept it to the print edition, and you couldn't find it anywhere on the web. So we thought the idea behind the postgame was to try to reinvent that space, really focusing on human interest, sports and lifestyle, sports and culture. We write long form, we write short form, but these are the kinds of stories that are not as focused on, the games and the teams that you care about, but they're much broader and they bring in a much broader audience. Depending on the kind of story that we would write, we'd have just as many females reading it as we would males, and you'd think a sports site would always have that younger male demo. So the concept there was really to focus on those types of stories and to do it in written word and then video format as well.
And how have you managed to grow that, bringing that audience with you?
From a growth standpoint, we launched originally in partnership with Yahoo Sports. So we saw that there was an opportunity. They didn't have the quote-unquote magazine. ESPN had ESPN the magazine and Grantland in the United States. So we built it as an appendage, if you will, an addendum to a lot of the stuff that was missing from Yahoo Sports. What we found in doing that was, and this is going back 3, 4, 5 years before people talked about social media, the kinds of stories that we were writing were the kinds of stories that were being shared widely through social media. So people were not going to put, Manchester United beat Liverpool and post that on their Facebook page. But they are going to talk about the story of this person who overcame adversity to achieve something amazing that they want to share all across their social web. So we had a very high index of social media followers around this content. We were named the most shared sports and lifestyle site in the United States back in 2012. So that concept of making this content highly shareable through both the storytelling process but also the selection of stories was something that we tried to do to grow our audience.
Yeah, at the heart of most stories are people, and if you engage with the people that are being talked about or written about or being filmed, that's where the secret of good content comes from, the story of the people involved. One of the things we've found with Independent.ie, and I'm assuming this applies to you as well, Ian, is that legacy that you have of coming from an old title, an old print title. There's a good side to it and a bad side. The bad side is, you're a bigger, kind of less flexible organisation, and so it's about becoming more flexible, which is something that we're doing and something that The Guardian has been doing. But the good side of it is you have a trust with the audience. So if somebody hears a breaking story on Twitter, the next thing if they're in Ireland, they're going to go to Independent.ie. If they're in England, they're going to go to you guys. Is that something that you experience?
I think coming from any kind of a legacy media background, you do carry with you the kind of the weight of reputation of of many decades previous. And I think the fundamentals of storytelling have never really changed. The fundamentals of great writing have never really changed. All we fiddle with at the moment is the curation of them, the presentation of them, and the sheer vast number of platforms on which we share them. So I never think of that as anything that holds us back or any kind of a burden. I think that is your heritage, and that's part of what makes you what you are. And it should be the kind of essential point of that bond of trust you do try to build with your more loyal users.
And what's your priority as head of sport? What do you see as your primary role?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm in charge of a kind of a vast website in sport terms. I'm in charge of 2 print newspapers, The Guardian Monday to Saturday, The Observer on a Sunday. So, I mean, I would be loath to say any of them is a particular lower priority than the other, but clearly, certainly most of what I expend my energy on is in the digital space.
Do you go along with this timeline rather than deadline now? Where you said when you started out and when I started out, it was all about deadline, and now it's less about deadline. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we put an awful lot of thought into scheduling content. We put an awful lot of thought into what we're launching for who, into what time zone, to what end. And we.
That's important, isn't it? To what end? Like, what is the purpose of what I'm doing here?
Yeah, why are you launching this piece at midday UK time? And why are you are you doing it on your main platform? Are you doing it simultaneously through social channels, or are you holding those back? And if so, why? If you're holding something back to kind of late in the night for us, well, who are you intending to hit with that? Is there some particular, say, US or Australian angle that's going to make it work better? All those things form part of your calculations.
It was interesting to hear you talk earlier about long form. Do either of you believe that there's still a place for long form? Obviously, you're still engaging with that. I don't think you do as much long form as you used to, do you?
We probably do more. I would think we do more. Yeah.
Do you think it still has a place?
It's interesting. You could probably speak to the demise of Grantland better than I could, David. You're closer to it. For those of you unfamiliar with Grantland, it was ESPN's very boutique, long-form sport and culture journalism site that was shut down rather viciously last week.
Abruptly.
And it has sent a few waves through certainly US sports media, but I think I'll let David speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's absolutely an opportunity for long form. It's really less about how long a piece is and more about what the topic is, how does it read, and how are you reaching the right audience. And we have the tools today to reach a very specific target audience this type of journalism is going to appeal to. And I think you also need to think of journalism in the sense of it's not just the written word anymore. I need my writers to be triple threats. I need them to be tremendous journalists. I need them to be good in social media and understand how you source stuff from social media, but also how you put stuff out on social media, and video. And you can't not have a video component to a lot of the editorial that we're doing. So long form to me is also, could be several minutes of video that accompanies the story. As it relates to Grantland, and I tried to hire Bill Simmons when I was running Yahoo Sports many years ago, and I thought he was pretty close to joining at the time, but he ended up signing another contract with ESPN, and they gave him a lot of opportunity to really spread his wings, and he did a tremendous job. I mean, Grantland was beloved to a very dedicated group of sports, fans. It was not necessarily for everyone, and some people have said it's a little more art in some respects. I think it was great quality journalism. I thought there was a real appetite and need for it. The issue is, in that environment, Bill was not really responsible for having to hit traffic numbers, having to hit revenue numbers, having to manage a very specific budget. So he was able to do something that startups or companies like The Guardian don't have the opportunity to do. You work in different level of constraints. So I think ESPN, because of the future unbundling of the American television cable market, is going to be facing a lot of tough decisions. And everything I've read ultimately is that it came down to being a financial decision, in that we can still have that great long-form writing. We'll just do it on our own platform that already exists. Why do we need to continue another brand and build another brand and another destination? There's an argument to be made on both sides, but I do think that it was a very sad day last week when they announced that they were suspending it immediately. And people don't know where they're going to be able to go to read these great writers that they fell in love with.
Well, I think that's probably the principal lesson, that if you're going to approach long form as a boutique proposition, then do it for altruistic reasons, do it because you love the journalism. Don't do it to make money, because it really won't.
Yeah.
Grantland, even as was reported by your site today, Grantland's entire revenue was about equal to Bill Simmons' salary. That's not a model.
There you go. He viewed that as break even.
Obviously, for sports media, and it's not just about what we read, it's about what we watch and how we use technology. And I don't know if any of you saw, there was a virtual reality talk here earlier, and how it can be used. And there was a demo with boxing, as it happens, so you're actually there in the corner and you can engage with the fight in that way. I'm not saying that Box Nation is going down the virtual reality road, but are you looking at ways in which you can enhance the viewer experience in the same way that traditional forums are looking for ways to enhance the reader experience?
Absolutely. Funnily enough, we've got quite an exciting prospect coming up that will allow customers to be able to select certain views that haven't been seen before in the boxing ring, and that's something we're currently exploring. Anything that we can do to enhance the delivery and what the customer, the paying customer, is being able to view, we're all for. Absolutely.
You're probably an unusual example in the sense that boxing is at the core of your family and it has always been part of your family. So this didn't grow out of some sort of traditional media sense or anything like that. It grew out of a love of a particular sport. So how do you then turn that into the kind of business that you're trying to turn it into now?
We've learned to adapt and to evolve with the times and to take advantage of the constant evolution of technology and to make sure that
did you have to go outside of yourselves to bring in new expertise?
I mean, traditionally that's what the game of being an excellent promoter within boxing is to secure the best rights you can from a broadcaster. We flipped it. We decided to, instead of going down that route, is to create a platform that we can exploit ourselves and use our own content, and not just live content. When I talk about that, you're talking about 35 years worth of archive content to support that. Anything relevant, documentaries, magazine programming to support it, to give you the opportunity to prove that there is a huge potential audience for boxing in the world.
What do you guys think of that? This idea that the content, the rights holders now, they're all powerful in many ways, aren't they? And they hold the future of the sports media really at their hands in a way that probably is uncomfortable for those of us that have worked in journalism for a long time. What do you think of that?
I don't really buy it. I mean, there have always been rights holders, and to be honest, when I see a Showtime or a HBO charge, bringing a fight like Mayweather-Pacquiao at a $100 premium, I dance a little jig, because I know that they're cutting off 90% of potential audience, and they're gonna want updates on it somewhere, and I'm gonna live blog that fight, and I'm gonna bring every kind of media to bear on my live coverage of that fight apart from the live stream, and I'm gonna get it, and that's the single biggest piece of content I've ever done on Guardian Sport was Mayweather-Pacquiao. So, let them. I mean, live rights are not the be-all and end-all of sports media. If they were, sports writing wouldn't exist.
Just explain that a bit more, just in terms of the Mayweather-Pacquiao. In what way was it the largest?
By volume, by sheer volume to one article page.
For live blogging, was it?
For any single piece of content, yeah. That was for the live blog, yeah. David?
I'll talk about the United States from a market perspective. There is a big shift that's going on right now. Today, there are 100 million cable and satellite households, and every single person is paying $6.50 to access ESPN every month, even if you don't watch sports. So if you watch sports, $6.50 is the biggest bargain you'll ever get. And if you don't watch sports, it is the biggest waste of money you ever have. we're starting to see an unbundling of the content and people being able to buy a la carte. And that's putting a lot of pressure on broadcasters who have jacked up these rights fees. In the case of the NBA, a new 10-year rights fee from ESPN that is doubling it, in many respects causing them to close things like Grantland and get rid of a lot of their talent. The next version of this, after these rights deals go away, think 5 years out, think 10 years out, these leagues, these rights holders are going to be able and have all the tools to go straight to consumer.
Absolutely.
So these events will go straight to consumer. The second they can make $1 more than they're making right now and have it pretty much guaranteed in any economic environment to do so, they will start shifting that. You see the NFL having the game from London live streamed on Yahoo, and Yahoo paid a pretty penny to have that one game, which aired at 6:30 in the morning on the west coast of the United States. Still paid, over tens of millions of dollars for that one game, as was reported. So I think you're seeing leagues test that out. Now, from a journalism standpoint, I think you're absolutely right. There is so much more to the story beyond the games themselves. And what I think the leagues do a very poor job of today, most leagues, most sports, is telling the stories around the events. They're great at, here's what's about to happen, here's what happened, now what? And that's where I think opportunities like The Guardian and what we try to do at the post game is put what happened in context, give you more information. And you mentioned before, this is drama. Sports to me is the great unscripted drama of our time, playing out in real time. It's got compelling characters. It has adversity and ultimately, if they're lucky, achievement and very often failure. And that makes for great drama. It's no different than any film or television show. And that, I think, is what, as journalists, we need to do, is to kind of tell the stories that aren't being told. And certainly these leagues are never going to tell a critical story about themselves.
Absolutely. Would you trust those leagues to tell their own story?
Absolutely not.
Any
Absolutely
kind
not.
of a fair and balanced
And
way?
there's a sense, I think, as well, that the audience, only go so far with that as well, don't they? They know that if they need to go to the fringes of the coverage to get possibly the real story or a different version of the story.
Absolutely.
And that's where the more traditional forms still have a big role to play.
Well, a lot of these leagues also, they've done what we were discussing before. They sell off their media rights to the biggest bidder, and they don't really view themselves as media companies. Well, that's a shift that's happening today, and hiring a few journalists to work on their website is not going to change the media mentality that major institutions like what you're talking about here have. Your ability to really tell stories and to dig in and to educate as well as entertain the populace.
Okay, George, I'm going to get the final word from you. You're excited about the future. Listen to a different type of thing there, but what you're trying to do, you're excited about that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the fact that we are seeing that shift. You've seen it with the NFL game very recently. We feel that we're at the forefront of that within our sport. The WWE network, they've done it. There's reports that the UFC are going to take much more control in what they're doing worldwide with their broadcasting rights. At the end of the day, there's going to be a play in the near future from some of either these big tech giants or these telecom or social media giants for lucrative rights, such as the Premier League in the UK. That's going to have an effect on how you access and watch your traditional high-quality sports. My question is, would I want to be, as I've mentioned before, boxing is, no doubt a second-tier sport, especially in the UK, behind the likes of the football. Would I want to be in a position where I'm beholden on whether Sky or BT are going to still be interested in the sport in 2 or 3 years? No, I'd rather go out, prove there's a market, get customers myself, whether that's over traditional TV platforms like we're doing in the UK or OTT in new emerging markets. I know which camp I would rather be in, absolutely.
Okay, on that note, David, Ian, George, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.